Hello and welcome to Stampscapes Friday Night Live. We're going to try some paper cutout mergers on the this live stream here. And what I mean by that is the addition of imagery, in this case, over the top of a darker background paper. This one's by Deanna Tupsidio. And you can see if we just stamp it directly over the top of this patterned paper, this really cool patterned paper. She has all kinds of different, compositional background textures and skies. But if you just stamp an open type of image, meaning there's a lot of open space in here, it's not all silhouette, the background will show right through the image. So this is my idea here. Or I don't know, I didn't come up with this, but this is my idea in terms of the usage of this image here. I stamped it onto a piece of wood grain paper like this, and I have cut it out of here, okay? Just the cabin portion. You don't need to cut out all the trees because the trees are in silhouette. And my idea is to go in here and just paste this right down here, which makes this background perfectly usable for this type of image right here, because that now you don't have all those textures and patterns showing right through the wood structuring like that. Now I think that looks pretty good and it works that way, but I wanted to try this wood grain paper right here. You can't really see the wood grain in here, but maybe you get a little bit of kind of a head start in coloring and texture, a little bit of pattern. You can't really see it too much in here. And what we'll do is we'll lay this down on this piece. So I know what it looks like, or how it can work over darker backgrounds, but let's see what it looks like over just this light background right here. And if this type of technique, is useful at all, just in terms of, I don't know, kind of adding in some inherent textures and patterning where that would be kind of, I don't know, it would take a little bit of time to do if we were just to color this from white like that. Hello, Linda, how are you? Okay, so let's try this out. Okay, so other pieces. I've just started exploring this kind of idea with this, but this background paper, again by Deanna, this whole area down here was this darkness right here. So that would show right through this pier right here. So this area right here was cut out, okay? I'm looking right here. I could have done it on that cabin too if I wanted a little bit of variation. But here it is on another cabin right here. All those red tones are right in here. But if we just cut out that cabin right there and paste it in here, it stands out and it works perfectly with this type of paper or any type of paper that has a lot of, I would say, pattern and contrast in the background where it would kind of detract from the form of the object stamped over the front of it. Okay, now these papers can all be used with kind of the more silhouette styles of imagery. But again, if you have kind of open imagery like that, it can be a problem in terms of being able to see it in a darker background area because those colors are going to be showing through. Hello, Cynthia, how are you? Okay, so that being said, the thing about doing this for me, it's the integration of that type of look into the scene where it kind of looks a little bit more natural. So because there's some little bit of variation in tone here in this wood grain paper. There's a little bit of a different tone. I did those other ones, those two other cards on the vintage paper. So you can kind of stamp in different areas depending on how dark you want it and how much, if you want a little bit of that patterning in your impression or something like that. But this paper is kind of, a really good one to use because you can choose, where you want those light and shadows to be in textures. But I did have this wood grain paper and I was just kind of curious to know what it would, these wood structures would look like on the wood grain paper. Okay, so I've pre-stamped these images out on my paper right here. I'll just show you that, you don't have to be super careful in terms of your trimming out of the forms. I don't want to be a 1/4 inch off or something like that, but it's not going to take too long because I have already stamped out the image in what will be my, I don't know, I guess the background. So this can just go right over the top of it, and you can just match the area with it. See, like this little area right here, I didn't bother cutting that out, like that little post right there for that overhang right there. Okay, so you can just utilize the impression of that part. And I didn't do the chimney right here. I did the chimney on this one right here because it's in a lot of darkness right there. So it's like that. So it stands out a little bit more. But you can see these things, these two pieces really stand out. So again, it's all about kind of the integration of those forms. So additional shading, tone, and everything like that. I want to bring a little bit of this color probably into these other areas for it to kind of look natural in there. Yeah, that's making it look natural. I mean, we could make it kind of stand out too. But I think for now we'll go for integration. It looks kind of strange to me. In other words, you know, if you want something to, you know, pop out at you and look, you know, quite a bit different from the background, and it would be natural to do that for like a subject matter type of thing, like a cabin. Something is on my stamp here. But yeah, you can make it, you can just kind of double down. Instead of integration, you can go for something a little bit more, kind of obvious, I guess would be the word. You know, where you have a totally different type of color scheme, background lighting scheme, or whatever. And then you have, like, you know, your subject matter kind of standing out visually, texturally, etc. Okay, now with the sedge filler, I just kind of stamped it like this, and I've created this little pathway just by utilizing this and retaining an open area right down here. Now that I did that, I'm thinking about using my fences or something like that. With that piece, and let's do the same on this one. Then when I use my dye-based ink on this one, I'm going to switch over to my hybrid ink just to get a little bit of a darker, more full impression. That one I did in brown. It could have been in black too, but I just went with the brown. This one I'm kind of putting this up a little bit higher so it looks like there's this like little hillside slope. Maybe I'll do that on this one too. I think it looks pretty good. I'll just use my hybrid. You know, I'm going to clean this off and do that. I just want to get that little bit of a kind of background texture in there. And let's do some additional texturing right here. This is what I call filler. So we have our focal points right here, or our foundation image for our scenes, and this is the filler kind of portion here. It's kind of connecting all of the different types of images in here. In here, it wasn't too much of a difference, but see, this little area of these trees right here are the ones over here. Okay, so I just used the same stamp, but I just used this portion right here to stamp that over here. So I'm just connecting them, in other words, with some textures down in there. Okay, here's the tiny rocks stamp. So it kind of creates this little bit of a pathway like that to the cabin. It'd be kind of a fun place to stay over the weekend. All right. Mm, let's do it right now. Okay, I was thinking about those fences. This is on a semi-gloss cardstock right here, and I want to use some colored pencils in here. But now I'm thinking about like maybe a fence here and here. And what I'm wondering now is if I should add that in now or should I do it later? If I do it now, sometimes I have to work around it a little bit. Hello, Bonnie, how are you? We're going to knock them off two at a time, Cynthia. Not quite conveyor belt, or not conveyor belt, but assembly line stamping, but, you know, almost. Let's see right here. Let's do... Let's do this one. I have the larger ones. I was wondering if I should do the larger. I think the smaller one. I have to think about which ink I'm supposed to be using here. The dye-based ink would probably work on here, but I'd use your thicker inks, your pigment, you know, like a VersaFine Clear maybe or something. I'm using my hybrid ink on this one, not on this one. Okay. There's not as much space here. I don't know if I want to put a fence right there. Okay, there's a left and right side to these fences here, so... I think in the latest Rubber Stamp Madness, when I was flipping through there, I think I saw Hannah Gibson's piece, and I think she used a bunch of these fences in here on this meadow that looked really good. Okay, we have that. A little bit of a stronger visual lead-in, do you think? And let's see here. This is going to be a really tiny little detail. Let's see. So I have these smaller fences too. Let's go with the... Let's do this. Let's have a little bit in the background. I don't know. I'm thinking, okay, if there's fences right here, you know, maybe there would be one in the back too. You know, it seems strange to kind of just fence it off in the front. In a fenced scenario. Little detail in the background. It kind of completes it though, doesn't it? A little bit visually. I don't use my smaller fences often, as much as I should. Here, let's do that again there. Okay, I changed my mind. After seeing this one, I'm gonna add this in the background like that. That was the dye-based ink. It stamped pretty dark. Okay, I lied. I think I am going to use some of these fences here, but I'll just use a smaller portion of it like this. Yeah. Okay. Now, as I get into this one here, see, I don't know what I think about this right here. It really kind of stands out weird, and because it's so dark. So I'm going to see if I can integrate it. So very much kind of a experimental card, which if it turns out okay, maybe it'll be a little bit, it's instructional for myself as well. All right, so there we go, like that. A little bit of a stronger visual lead-in again. When you have these kind of openings like that between things, it's usually, for me, it's between like grass usually. Reeds, branches, that type of thing. But, you know, a fence is like a super powerful entry point into a scene. It kind of draws the viewer into the piece. You know, it's like there's an open door in here for you to enter in and kind of whatever, you know, someone's welcome. Of course, if we're doing like a Halloween scene, maybe we close it off and say, beware, you're not welcome here. or it's just like danger, you know, something like that. Okay, let's get these pieces, these cabin pieces glued into the scene here. All right. And again, I've mentioned this before, but if I'm not in a live stream, I probably would utilize my spray adhesive, you know, just to get a little bit more of a, like an even coat down here. I don't know, some of you might use like a brush or something like that, but just for the sake of this video live stream format, we'll just do this. I don't know, that feels pretty flat and even. I just don't want it kind of, you know, bumpy, because this paper here is really, really thin, you know, after all, it's disposable placemat paper. Okay, so get that here. This one merges in kind of with this format here because these are the colors kind of in this wood grain paper. It's like, that's like Deanna's colors right here. Look at that, it's almost like the same exact color that she has right here. But on this one's, it's really going to stand out. So again, it's a matter of bringing in some tones into this piece that will create a little bit of harmony between here. You know, then I said that, you know, I think I'm going to glue this one in later. I think I want to bring in some tones into here first. And if this piece of paper is right there, I kind of have to work around it where I don't have to if it's not covered up right now, so I'll just cover it up later. I'll paste that over the top. At some point in time, I'll probably do a couple, let's do a couple layers of tone into this piece right here. Okay, so, oh, this one right here, it's starting to buckle on me a little bit. I can see it's, I don't know, can you see that right there? Where it's wet right there? When it's dry, it should kind of bounce back, but it's a little bit like ridged now because of all that moisture from the glue. So that's where the spray adhesive really helps out too. You never get that with spray adhesive. All right, so let's see. Let's add in, let me use this as a reference here too so I can see how warm it is. I don't know if, there's not really that yellowish color. Let's go to something like this. Okay, so I'm bringing in some colors that are going to harmonize with that cabin a little bit. And then I'll bring in some colors too. I don't know what it is, word is embellish, not embellish, but to harmonize and whatever, work into the scene over the top of the base layer. Visually blending tones. Sorry. It's a new technique. I haven't really thought about it before, you know, what I'm going to have to do on this. I'm talking about ever. I'm like pasting things on, pasting things into an open area. Okay, so it's strange for me not to be coloring that cabin right there. Okay, so we'll bring this in here like that. And again, that's kind of creating this base layer tone that has colors relating to that. I'm creating a little bit of light and shadow in here by not going over some of it. So it's like there's like a streak right in here, then I have it down here. There's a little open area. This area right in here will be more like, like dirt or something like that. Just some, yeah, this dirt path leading up to gravel path. I don't know, whatever. Gravel path leading up to the cabin. This image right here is a little bit wet. I'm smearing it a touch. I had two comments. One of them was on the Facebook group. It wasn't to me, it was just to the group in general, but someone was having trouble with ink drying, or ink smearing more specifically, post stamping, okay? And I think it was after it actually dried too. The imagery was dry overnight or dried overnight, okay? And then I got another comment via email, or I don't know, just someone. I don't know if they sent in like a question about that, but they just made a comment, when I said how's it going or something. I don't know, I can't remember now, but it was both this week, and I thought it was this. I don't know, from reading that post, I thought it was the same person. I couldn't remember who wrote that, who mentioned that, and it wasn't. When I looked back on Facebook, I was like, oh, that wasn't her. But one of the things is, that I mentioned to them is you have to watch out. It's not just necessarily the media and surface combination that's used. It's the amount of ink on the stamp pad. And from the impressions, I could tell it was like a super, super juicy pad. Just from the looks of the line weight and how something was stamped out. So sometimes when like there's a puddle of ink that's drying, like in big solid areas, there's like a little puddle that can form. And you can see it kind of glistening, right after it stamps out. But even when that's dry, like dye-based ink works by staining the surface. But if you have this puddle of ink that's sitting on the surface for a while, and it takes a little bit of time to dry, a lot of the moisture, it's dry because it's absorption and evaporation. But the thicker little pool of ink, like a drop of ink, that's taken a little bit of time to set up, that can leave, it can dry, but it's leaving like a little pile of fine kind of ink residue. And that's the thing that, when you go back in to color it, if you're coloring with other additional dye-based inks, it could be putting that little puddle, or, like this little pile of a powdery residue back into solution, and that's the thing that kind of smears. So kind of be careful about that. So I just, if I re-ink my pads or something like that, and if it's when I'm inking something up, I'm gonna do it here, but let's say I'm inking this up like this. If this is like super juicy and I see it kind of puddled in there a little bit, what you do is when you're inking it up like this, before you stamp it out, I kind of do this and I kind of drag it a little bit like this, okay? And what you're doing is, if there's like little beads of ink everywhere, you're kind of flattening it out and maybe reabsorbing some of that excess ink on the surface back into the pad. You don't go like this. You don't drag it for an inch, but like like a 16th of an inch, or a couple centimeters or something like that. And then it won't be built up like that quite so much in your impression. No, you don't press hard in it either. You just kind of drag it a little bit, and that's the technique that I use. Um, that I have to do that a lot of times if I went to like a convention where I know I'm going to be demonstrating for 8 hours or something like that all day. Um, I really ink up my pad quite a bit, but those, because I don't want to, be taking too much time, like constantly re-inking my pad, and keeping it in kind of like a medium dampness, that's usually around what I go for when I re-ink my pad. I don't want to go for like store-bought brand new pad, whatever saturation. But like at a convention like that, I'm constantly using that little bit of a wipe off with the more solid styles of imagery, like something like this, maybe up in the trees. Like on this one right here, I used my pen, and it was like way too juicy. I kind of forgot about that, so it's all blobby because before it dried, it kind of spread out like that. Well, we'll bring out the highlights on the trees with the acrylic paint pens though, so no big deal. All right, so here's some greens like that. Okay, those are the kind of lighter and medium tone. We'll go into a darker tone right here, and the darker tone will add additional hue and value and shade in here. And it's much closer to the green that was used in the trees there. I use both green and black in the impression for the trees like that. See right down here at the base of the fence post right here, you just kind of darken them in like that. And it looks like the fence is sitting into the scene a little bit more. And right at the base of the cabin like that, I kind of extend the shading of the bushes right here that are right next to the foliage, that it's right next to the structure. All right, it's kind of sitting in there a little bit more. Let's see how kind of weird this looks right here at this point in time. See, we've made that dark. It's starting to integrate. It integrates a little bit more though than, certainly from how it looked on here, just without all this other tone in here. It's because this was the darkest thing in here, where we want this to be. It doesn't have to be the lightest thing in there, but you want it to be fairly light. So around in here, I'll make it a lot darker, just so that you're drawn into kind of, you don't want to, look like this structure in there that you're kind of going to, that's like in this, this kind of whatever tone of blackness, or, or darkness or something like that. Unless we're doing like I keep bringing it up, like a Halloween scene or something like that, where, something's looking a little bit more ominous. Okay, so let's get this one done here too. Okay. This one here I didn't color or didn't cut out the chimney, so I had to be careful not to put glue on that chimney right there. Okay, and just get it roughly in there like so. Like I said, this was an easy cutout. And I normally think about doing that with this cabin right here on a light background, but I just wanted to see what it would look like, you know. Right in here, it was kind of necessary because we had all those reds and purples and everything like that within the body of the structure like that. So, but let's see about this, and let's see if it kind of is any type of useful type of process that we can use. Hello, Caroline. How are you? All right, so we got all of that brown right now. Now we need to bring that same tone or a similar tone, related tone, into another area, I think, for visual harmony. We'll keep some of this light here, though, to, again, to draw in the viewer a little bit more. Like that. Where I'm adding it over the top of the green, it's not going to look brown, but it looks a little bit more of like an earthy greenish tone, and then it, you know, it harmonizes with their structure a little bit more. You can try other things too. You can go into it with, oh, like here's some other brown tones in here too. Let's see. We can add it right down here. Colored pencils kind of, you know, are real textural. So you get a lot of the colors from underneath showing through. So sometimes it's hard to get, you know, like a really deep saturation of hue in there because, again, it's real textural. So you can use other types of media in there, like right on here. Let's get that a little bit richer. This isn't really doing a lot in terms of adding a lot of media down there, but it just looks a little bit more full right in here. Just going with a really light tone and filling in a little bit like that. Okay, let's blend out some of that darker one that I just added too. You don't have to get things like real blended in, especially if you're using white pigment ink at the end. White pigment ink is like, in many ways for me, it removes the necessity for like really kind of graceful applications of most of the media that I use on here. Colored pencils, dye-based inks, pigment inks, acrylic paint pens, the white pigment ink just it solves all that. Maybe I never get like really good at blending though, you know, because I know that I can use that. Or I'm going to use it at the end. All right, so let's leave that at that right now. See how much more vibrant it is right in here. So, I mean, that really stood out, but again, it's sitting back in there a little bit more. The darker I make it in here, the richer I make it. Like, this is more intense now than that. That's dull, and this is like saturated, vibrant, right in here. Intense, that's the word I'm looking for. So that's now, it's sitting back in there before it like really stood out against all this whiteness in here, you know, because it's just a different texture and pattern. All right, let's do it. The same things on here. I'm not sure what colors to bring in here on this tone. Let's see. Let's use a little bit of brown. I'm not going to use brown for brown. I'm just using it as a little bit of a darker tone. Let's anchor our cabin in here a little bit more. And I'm just doing it with a really light touch like that. Okay, so see that's just like sitting in here just a little bit more. Let's do this too. Let's render our cabin a little bit more. Rendering means like shading and kind of adding volume to a piece with shadows and textures and everything like that. Okay, let's do the same thing on here. That looks pretty good. See that right underneath the eaves. I'm kind of following the design too. I made certain areas of the design, like the underneath the eaves here, underneath this porch, it's a little bit darker, so I'm just kind of making it a little bit darker with this. And I'll just go with like a 5% value of this darker brown. Now see, this is all kind of a uniform. This is one side of that cabin. And it's all uniform, so I'm just going to, let's do this right here. Let's make this back area a little bit darker. I'll go like this. So this is going from a little bit darker to a little bit lighter. It's subtle, you know, like I said, it's not, I'm not doing this color, it was just like a 5% or something like that version of that brown. So again, that form looks like it's a little bit more mottled now. The thing that I'm kind of wondering, I guess I do like it, especially like right up here, the separation between this and those trees, it's a lot more extreme having, you know, utilized the cutout, I think, than just coloring directly on there. I don't know. It's a little bit different looking. Whether or not I utilize that in the future, I don't know. It's just a matter of if it looks kind of different enough. Okay, now these trees are going to be casting some shadow over the top of this rooftop a little bit, so I'm going to add a little bit of variation like that. Okay, so see, it's just not like one, whatever, parallelogram in there. I forgot these. What are those things, those other windows called that pop out like that? Is soffit a different thing? I can't remember what those are called, or these are called here. It's not skylight, it's, you know, it's those things that stick out, but see that right there. So we modeled that. So again, I think it's, you know, reasonably integrated in there now. And that was just with one pencil. I'll bring in some light into it too, but I think that looks pretty decent. Okay, now see that chimney right up there? That's on the, that was cut out, but let's turn it in space by making it a little bit darker on that side, and we'll do the same things right here. I'm learning to color. All right, so a little bit of variation up there. And see this, these two angles right here? It goes the front of the cabin and the back of the cabin like that. What you do is you change, you don't want these two to be the same value. You want some to be a little bit dormer. Thank you, Bonnie. What we'll do is we'll turn this in space. We're not really doing it, but you know, you're visually turning it right here. So see, we've darkened up this a little bit, so it looks like a separate, you know, plane from each other like that. Okay. Let's see. Let's go to black here. Dormer windows. Yeah, thanks, guys. Is the cabin stamped and colored with pencils or markers? Caroline, much easier. It was stamped onto the piece of wood grain paper and then cut out and then pasted in there. Okay, but it's a uniform value because I'm just stamping it over the top of that. So we're just going in here. So I didn't have to do like multiple values of brown because it's already has those in here, plus a little bit of grainy texture, which I don't know if you can really see. Like, you know, it's right in front of me and I don't know if I can really see it too much. But, you know, just to change this up a little bit like this, what we're doing is we're adding that shading into it like this now. So it looks more like a rounded form. But again, it's, I don't know, it gave me a little bit of a head start to the whole piece, and that's just by stamping it onto those papers. So as I mentioned this earlier, but stamping those cabins or structures onto papers like this, I think it might look a little bit more dimensional too. I mean, on this one for sure, because it's just so much of a different color than the background in here. You know, where we're starting off with an existing color. Color and value, I should say. You know, the value is the biggest issue of stamping over these background papers like that. They're awesome with like silhouette types of imagery and really effective. And that's what a lot of them are kind of geared towards, like something like this. But if you want something light in here, barring stamping in white or something like that, you know, for a certain type of look, you know, we have to integrate other types of imagery if it's going to be within the body of this piece. So structures or something like that. So look on this one right here, I stamped out the old or the watermill right here. I stamped this one vertical right here to go with the lines here, but I would just cut this out if I wanted this on here, and then it would stand out that light instead of stamping it on here directly and having all those dark colors right within the body of this right here. So doing just something like simple technique like this, doesn't have to be on wood grain paper, but just something lighter, it would really kind of open up the possibilities of this type of paper right here. Photo stamping too, you know, typically we have a lot of clouds, and I've adjusted on my clouds that are free for download. I've adjusted on a lot of them. I've adjusted the saturation and contrast, especially of those clouds, so that they're really light, so that we can kind of stamp wherever we want. But sometimes you want a more dramatic cloud where there's a big difference between, you know, you have these sharp blues and whites, you know, like cumulus clouds or something like that. And, you know, where you want that kind of, you know, separation of whatever, cloud and sky, you know. Most of it's like blue and white, but it doesn't have to be. But yeah, just stamping something over the top of it, it kind of opens up the possibilities, I think. Like I said, I don't, you know, I'm sure people have been doing this, but I don't, maybe not in landscapes. I don't know. Have people been doing this? I can't remember if I've seen like cutouts in the, like the Facebook group. There's so many different techniques that people use in the Facebook group, but I don't know. I can't remember too much of that. Or if they did it, you know, it just wasn't really mentioned. I mean, this is like, it's hardly, you know, like I said, I'm sure, you know, people have done this type of thing. People are cutting out things all the time. You know, doing it on crickets, you know, and cutting out things, you know what I mean, and just integrating it. This is just doing it in a landscape setting. So, you know, without, I don't know, whatever, you know, it's kind of like the dye kind of concept, right? All right, a little bit more shadow form in here. Okay, I haven't done anything like down in here, but it already has all these colors in here. So I'm just going to add in a little bit of variation. It already has variation in here. So see, but I added these textures in here, and I'm just going to just kind of accentuate what already exists down here by going over it with a little bit of like a, like I said, it's like a 5% gray here. I'm using black, but I'm just using a really light touch like this. Now on this one right here, there isn't any white in here, so I don't know if I could use, you know, like a white pen. So maybe I have to, I don't know, be a little bit more careful with my placement of tone. Okay, let me see. One thing I didn't want to get rid of in Deanna's paper right here was like that intense red. It went all the way back there, so it was like this horizon glow, you know, because it's like this cranberry red or something like that. Um, but let me go and add a little bit more. See, I kind of added a little bit more intensity to it, but let's bring a little bit of that red down in here. It's not supposed to be like red grass or anything like that, but it's just like, you know, some of these colors maybe are reflecting off of the the ground in here, like so. Can it take a little bit of green, do you think? Did that help with the placement of the background? The paper, you're talking about the paper like that? Yeah, with doing these cutouts like that, I could place the cabin anywhere. Okay, now if I didn't do that cabin in this cutout right here, I would have to, this cabin would have to go down here. It would have to have been stamped in this lighter portion of the background paper, okay? Like on this one, I don't know if I could use it anywhere. I mean, you could do it. I mean, if you wanted kind of a dark cabin and I was just going to do like some windows in there that were kind of illuminated, that would be fine. But you wouldn't see very much of the cabin, though, because it would be so hidden within a lot of darker tones, okay? All right, and just kind of bringing a little bit of a slight touch of green into this, into the lighter area. I'll make it barely visible. But Deanna's given us a little bit of a little peekaboo kind of ability for whatever colors you want down here in these couple lighter areas. I don't know if you can see it right in here. All right, so there's that right there. I'm trying to think of what I want in here. The biggest thing for me is it's like how to treat some of the lighter things on the cabin, especially if I don't have the usage of white at my disposal. I I might be able to do if I had like a tan color pigment ink or something like that. I might be able to add a little of that on top here. But white is just gonna, I think white's gonna be too much. So let's see. Let me go with this one right here. I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna make my shadows in here. Let's go all the way to black. If you can't necessarily, if there's not a medium that you have that you can add and make something physically lighter, what you can do is you can make areas on the forms just a little bit darker, like in the shadow areas, and then by contrast it makes, in this case the rooftop, look a little bit lighter. Okay. So let's do that right there. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's fooling my eye. I think the rooftops seem a little bit lighter. All right. All right, so I'm going to add in some additional forms in here too. I have my oak branch here. And let's do, should I add it in right now? I want to do a bunch of, let's do that later. Let's add in our pigment ink and acrylic paint pens in here. I think on this one, I have this one right here, this quote stamp, nature always wears the colors of the spirit. I'm let's center this one and hope that when I stamp it up higher, I can kind of get it a little bit straighter, because I just kind of match the top of this with the top of the card. Forgive me if my quote stamp comes out skewed. As long as it's not skewed like a quarter, well, I don't know, quarter of an inch, maybe eighth of an inch would be too much. You know, in other words, I just want it reasonably straight. Okay, go like that. And oak branch right here. Just don't stamp over the top of your quote stamp and you're fine. Letter forms, text should be, you know, reasonably legible. It's like word stamps and like creatures' heads, be it people or animals, you generally want those to be not covered up. Go for a nice solid impression of it. Hold this down a little bit longer. Then, you know, like a piece of white cardstock or something like that, uncoated cardstock. Okay, let's do that. It's creating too strong of a triangle form right there. Okay, better. Oops. Don't get to your smallest of little forms at the end and use the same amount of pressure as you did with like larger forms where you're squashing it down. Sometimes you develop muscle memory and then it's like a small stamp or something like that and someone stamps it up like, you know, like that, you know, as opposed to like, you know, like that. That one doesn't look so bad, but, you know, some of the really small little bird stamps, if you use too much pressure on them, the duck's information, you know, something like that, or if it's a duck that has like a bill or a beak on it, like a the egret or something like that. Just light, even pressure. Adjust your pressure with those last types of images. Okay, let's see here. Let's do a lot of repair work in here. I was mentioning before when I stamped out, my green pen right here is like way too juicy. As a matter of fact, I'm storing it kind of pointed down. I must have re-inked it at some point in time. These things just retain so much ink in there. It was like what I was saying earlier. I don't know. Don't over-ink your stamping pad, but those pens right there, I don't know. It's like when I re-ink them, I don't want to be re-inking them again anytime soon, so I probably like way over-inked it. I was wondering if the Hodgkins were in the house. I was watching a video earlier today of this guy that was trying to do like all of the hikes in Acadia. And I thought, yeah, he had them all down. You know, the ones that I remember at least. Grain acrylic paint pen. But he didn't have the precipice trail. And I was wondering, okay, is that trail closed? Because when I was hiking it, I was wondering why. I was kind of amazed that they have that type of trail in a national park like that. Yeah, I was thinking people are going to be falling off of it too much. And I guess it was closed for it's not closed because of anything dangerous. It was just closed for I think it was the peregrine falcon breeding season or something like that. So just a certain time of year it's closed. So those are I guess that was the time when he was doing all these videos. I probably mention Acadia every time Linda or Harold are on watching these videos. It's because it made a big impact on me. I was hiking all those trails out there with no one around. I said, I'm moving to Maine. Of course, I haven't been out there during the winter, though, you know. I would be too much of a weather wimp to. I'm not hardy enough for that. Okay, a little bit of a lighter. Acrylic paint pen, different green here. So getting all kinds of textures in here that are going to look like way too much right now. But again, the white pigment ink is going to go in here and hopefully bring everything together and solve all of my kind of a color application, whatever. I want to call them errors because I don't know, it's just all kind of part of my process here. But I guess it wouldn't be good if it was the last thing I was, thing I was going to be applying on here. Okay, so all of that came out real blobby. So this is kind of a good lesson here too. If you stamp something out, it was like came out real blobby. If you add in some details back into it, like this, okay. Now, if you've never done little kind of highlights like this before, if you put it on one little area like that, it's going to look really strange. So that texturing is integrated throughout the piece. All right, so see that right there? I'm kind of bringing in some light back into those trees, and it looks a little bit more kind of dimensional. What is the temperature there in Maine right now? How was it? Was it a mild winter for you this year? I haven't seen when watching kind of the national weather. Out here, I'm in San Diego. It was about, I don't know, it was an average year. I don't know. I think we had less rainfall, though, under average. So I don't think we're in drought conditions. We might be, though. I'm not quite sure. I think it was last year. A lot of the reservoirs got refilled, that had been down for a really long time. Okay, so adding in these little textures right down here. So that's kind of integrating the lower portion of that cabin into the terrain too. So I'm adding in some of this little texturing over the top of that wood grain paper cutout piece, okay? So that's really helping it to merge in with the surrounding here. On this one right here, you know, when I'm starting to do like a lot of darkness, or when there's a lot of darkness inherent in the piece like this, and there's no, I don't, that's not really white right there. Okay, that's like white right here. This is like it's like a misty pale, I don't know what cotton candy pink or something like that. Real pastel, you know. I have to be careful about how much highlighting I do, if any. Okay, it's like you wouldn't see a lot of highlights on like a really like a foggy day or something like that. I mean, if there's a still bright light or something like that, but everything kind of becomes a little bit muffled. But I do want to get a little bit of variation, I guess. I don't know if you could see that right in here. I do want to get a little bit of variation because kind of extending out your lighting scheme, even if it's in the most subtle little types of touches, it can make a big difference. Like if this is like white and this is like black right here, you know, if it only goes up to like here, and this is the range right here, even if you put in those little tiny things that'll push it over there, I think that's good. Now in here, we can do like one or two little stars in here. I think that would be kind of cool. But see, there's just like doing something like this. I guess I can do a cutout thing of, you know, like the little person. I have that little lady with the lantern, or we have those little. I don't have room in here with those lanterns. I want to put the lanterns in here though, but oh, you can do things like, yeah, I guess you can have like string of lights in here. I wouldn't do it in this piece, but kind of artificial lighting, but just having these little things like this, I think it's just kind of, yeah, can you guys see that on your screen here? But isn't that kind of waking up this whole area down here? It just makes Deanna's papers like, it's a compliment to Deanna's papers. Deanna's papers are providing the richness and the change in hue and everything like that. But now doing like this kind of creates a little bit of textural contrast between her really soft forms that she's added in here. You know, these graceful kind of, I don't know, color transitions and subtle textural changes like that. So when you add in something like lighter and crisper next to it, it makes, by contrast, those characteristics of her piece even more so, because it, you know, it's like the opposite of it in value, again, in texture. You know, it's like soft against sharp. Let's see here. This would be a good one to create these little glowing. Here, let's do this. Let's do. Okay, I'll use this pen right here. I'm going to do some little fireflies in here, I think. So let's go like this. I'll make some of these dots a little bit bigger. And then I'll add in some green or another color back over the top of them. The little hazy kind of glow that they have. Yeah, let's do that. So a little bit of a larger dot. That one there is The Lone Firefly by Eric Carle. those children's books. And white pigment ink. For these little tiny dots, you don't have to fray the top of your cotton swab too much, but I'm not dabbing it into this really hard because I don't want to smash the tip there, so just kind of bounce it on there a little bit like that. A lot of you are going to have like really juicy white pigmenting pads if you have a white pigmenting pad, just because you don't use it too often. I don't know, some of you might, but just be careful about the amount that you apply. So this one for me is kind of a drier pigmenting pad. And then let's make some of these, or all of them, maybe. Make some of these glow, and then I'll add a little bit more color to it. See, if I did a little green dot, when I put the white over it, I can't see the green anymore. So I've found that you kind of lay a guide dot down for the I don't know, whatever, for the foundation, target point of your white pigment ink, and then you can add in the color later. If I want to make it like a little bit of warmer tone or whatever, green or something like that, then you add that in over the top of it. It's really easy to do. It's not, like a tedious process unless you have like 1,000, fireflies or something like that. So yeah, that's kind of like really stark right there. That white, it doesn't look kind of right. I don't live in an area with fireflies. I've just seen them on photos or in videos. There's some pretty cool AI generated visuals out there these days. And I was watching this one that had there's this channel out there. It's just a bunch of scenes of nature, but it seems like he's got like fireflies in all of them. And those ones were this really kind of warm yellow tone. It looked good. It's kind of weird though. On that AI generated one, there was a full moon in there, but it was like in front of some background trees. So I guess the AI doesn't know, doesn't know to not do that. Okay, so a little bit of green in here like that. But see, it kind of sets in there a little bit more. All right. That. To me, I think the rooftop is okay. I don't know, just I'm thinking about some highlights in there, but it would be like too extreme, I think. All right, now on this one right here, we allowed that to dry a little bit, but these areas up in the tree, some of this area down here is still a little wet, but we need a little bit more contrast in there. 46 degrees and rainy today. Okay, we have lots of rain. 70s yesterday. See, I visualize that when you say that, when you describe the weather. I'm subscribed to a few of the live stream YouTube channels out there. There's a whole bunch of them from Maine. I don't know. Maybe I just saw that because I subscribed to one channel like that. So it's like a bunch of them, popped up on my YouTube feed. But I don't think there was one. There wasn't one of Acadia, There wasn't like a national park. I don't think, or there wasn't when I looked last. The Hungry Caterpillar. Yeah, the ladybug. I love that, those Eric Carles. I mentioned this before in another video, but I don't know, for a while in there, it seems like there was a lot of, I knew a lot of people, or a few, not a huge amount, but, like my cousins and stuff, or friends, were having kids, so one of the things I would get for, is little, like baby shower things, I would get that, I didn't get the Hungry Caterpillar, but that one's like the awesome one. I just figured a lot of other people would get that type of thing, or they might already have it, So I'd get the lonely firefly. Wait, was that it? Or was it the lonely... Um, I already forgot the name of it. Oh my gosh. There was that clicky beetle one. I don't think it was named the lonely clicky beetle. I don't know. It was something like that, but it was the firefly one for sure. And that clicky beetle, I got those ones because it had that interactive, well, not interactive, but it had that battery powered little effect at the end of the book on the last page. So the clicky beetle one, when you opened it up, it triggered this little clicky sound, you know. And the firefly one was, you know, was a bunch of little twinkly little, I don't think it was LEDs at the time, but there was these little twinkly lights in there. Okay, I need to heat set this one. This one's like completely wet with thick little dots of acrylic paint on here. A little bit warped from that heat, but just counterbend. It's a little bit warped right here because of that. It's extra thick with that cabin there. But, you know, we're going to mount this anyways. Okay, let's add this. Okay, now this one's going to really benefit from a lot of this white pigment ink in here. You can see how I cheated with that white pigment ink and snuck it into here in the form of those fireflies like that. I need to... Okay, now that's darkened in there a little bit. I need to pop, you know, a little bit more tone into that, white tone into that because it dried darker. Okay, so let's add this in. Let's see if we can integrate this cabin in here even more with like some white pigment ink going over like, I don't know, maybe over the top of it or something like that. And maybe a few different areas. Okay, so in between some of these trees like this. This green ink is so wet, some of that green is coming off on here because this is a water-based pigment ink. A lot of pigment inks, you can use any kind of pigment ink you want on here, but the oil-based might be a little bit better if you're going over like a really thickly applied dye-based ink for your impressions there. See this kind of this little funnel of light coming through there, or funnel passage. Like that. So you have this light kind of streaming in like that. And we'll put it in between some of these branches like that. And see how this kind of pushes that tree back into the distance by putting a little bit of that pigment ink in there like that. It looks like it's glowing in the background quite a bit more. All right, now let's lay some down here to each side of the pathway here. When you add this white pigment ink where light meets darker, okay? So you add it in those lighter areas and then you can transition it out like this, okay? You don't just kind of tap it like that and then lift up and there's this big white kind of ball there. What you do is you transition it from the lighter areas. So even in here, kind of when I'm doing it, I'm kind of moving it little micro distances, even if it's in a little targeted area like this right here. I'm kind of tapping it right here, but then I kind of go up, you know, maybe like an eighth of an inch like that. It's at its wettest point, you know, when I just ink it up. And then I kind of, after I tap it a few times, I'm going out from there like that. So it's like spreading that out a little bit like that, okay? And like I said, a lot of people, when they do this, they're using a really, really juicy white ink pad. So it's just like blob, 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 and it's like, oh my god, this is like really hard to do. But it's just because you want this to be like a really dry brush style of application here, so you really want it kind of drier on your applicator. Okay, so 100% cotton balls is what I use. I just figure cotton's like cotton balls is one of the softest things, and it's going to be absorbent, so you have a lot of ink to transfer like that. It might be a lot of dry ink though, okay? I mean, it's wet, but it's just, it's really very lightly applied over the surface of the applicator right there, so you can get that really subtle tone in there. And that was through the use of like 20 taps are in there where you can barely see it, right? But that's what you want. You want that control over it. Now, if you're adding like a huge amount somewhere, then yeah, you can add quite a bit more. Watch this right here on this fence right here. See that right there? Look at that, really kind of this soft, kind of welcoming lighting, kind of leading us in. See this fence right here, like this? I'll add it right at the base of that, right down here. So like that, right there. That really helps it out, doesn't it? Sorry, there's someone at my front door. I have no idea who that is. But it looks like they're having a get-together next door. Maybe they think that we're like the next door people. Oh, that was our next door neighbor. I'll text him later. Okay, so there's that right there. Yeah, it's changing it up, huh? Doesn't it add so much, Linda, like that? Okay, now see, the reason why I didn't add in the foreground imagery is because I was going to add in some of these softer touches right up here, and I want that overhanging branch to be nice and crisp up there. Let's do this though. Our white pigment ink always dries darker than what it looks like when it's been freshly applied. I might have to go back and add in a little bit more of that acrylic paint pen in here. Okay, now I'm going to go a little bit more this time. And the more you build up, the less it fades out though, okay? So I'm not sure if I'm taking this too light right here with too much of a buildup. I'm not sure. Like that. But when you spray this too, that white pigment ink gets a little bit darker too. Actually, I don't need to spray seal this one though. But let's put it like that. And let's put a little of that green back in there. When I do this right here, it's just to scribble some of that pigment ink off that's going up into my tip there, that wet pigment ink. Okay, there we go, like that. Looks like this. Let's go with the I'm going to use my hybrid on this one right here because I'm going over the top of all that pigment ink. I don't usually like to go with my hybrid ink as the base colors because when I start coloring it, if this is built up a little bit, it might start smearing down there. But on this one here, too, like a VersaFine clear would be fine for the foreground imagery if you want it to be really, really dark against that background. That clear would be a really good choice. A lot of the thicker styles of black inks, like the Memories one, which is dye-based ink, but that one was always, to me, it was like super, super thick. And I couldn't use it for my main imagery because I was doing so much additional coloring with dye-based inks, and it would always smear. But I knew people that was their favorite pad, and that was their favorite black pad. And I've mentioned this like a zillion times, so forgive me for repeating myself all the time in these videos. But yeah, Ken Pesha, who taught classes and did a ton of scenic stamping, he swore by it, but it always puzzled me until I went out and I was doing a lot of, convention demonstrations at that Mesa, Arizona stamp convention. And I saw, oh my God, it's like if my oil-based VersaFine Clair was drying, on my foreground imagery, like within, I don't know, like a couple hours or something like that. That was another instance where I thought. So when I went to Maine and I was hiking Acadia National Park in full color in the autumn with amazing display of tree colors. Here's pink I'm going to use. I thought, okay, I'm moving out here. Then when I was demonstrating at the convention in Arizona, and I saw, oh my God, my VersaFine Clairs are like drying, I don't know. It might have been drying 10 times faster than at home. I said, I'm moving out here just because of ink drying, characteristics. Okay, let's put some wildflowers down here. I'm adding a lot of this, but I'm kind of clustering it here and there. But green and variations of green and brown and things like that really go well with pink, I find. Let's do this too while we're at it. These two cards didn't take too long to do. Not this one right here, but more of like a pink. Let's see. We'll go with a couple different values of pink here. Now this one could have been pretty cool with like a deer or something in here, but now it's like too much texture used in here, I think. Or if I did one, it would have to be in like a StazOn, I think. There's so much paint in these areas right here. All right, I think I like that in there. You know what I'm going to do down here? That gives me an idea. Let's add a little bit of now that I see it on here, very subtle kind of florals down here with this pink, and it'll relate to this pink right up here in the light. Now, I think this pink would show up a little bit too, pretty extreme on this paper, but it's not. I think it's because this paper is a matte paper, and I think my acrylic is kind of absorbing into the surface a little bit more than it does on top of all these colored pencils and things like that. So I don't know if you can see these little florals down there. It's standing out a little bit more, but again, when it dries, it's going to kind of integrate in there a little more. It's going to get darker. Okay. So, all right. So anyways, here's a couple different pieces right here using that paper cutouts of my cabins in here. I think it worked out pretty good. If I was to just stamp them and color them, I couldn't do it on this, but if I was to just color my cabins, I probably would leave my rooftop a couple shades a little bit lighter in general. But as far as being able to have this image in this background like there, I think it totally works. Let me do something right here, looking at this one too. So I have this kind of white pigment ink coming up from the base like that. I'm going to see what this looks like with a little bit of tone over the top of it, maybe? I don't know if you can see it right here. I have a little of that white coming in like that. Okay, there we go, like that. So a little bit of that lighting coming over the top of it. I think it's sitting into the scene, the setting a little bit more. Plus, it lightened up that rooftop a little bit right over here. So there's a little bit of this change in here of a value just by having that little bit of light like that. So, this one right here, I can use like a word stamp in here. Maybe I'll put it over the top of that. Or you can add a little bit more color in the background if you want to too. I just left that light up there in white. There was that stain on my paper before I started this. I figured an image is going to cover that up, but it didn't. So let me just... I'll put some white ink over it. These are like your whiteout pens too. Your correctional. This is like it's like a correctional pen there. This is like a correctional ink right here for me. It's kind of more than that, but it can correct, pretty well. There. Okay, so anyways, a little more of a test with this cutout idea. Linda wrote a comment on my piece from yesterday. I might be convincing her because she wants to avoid cutting out like I always did. But on this one right here, that cabin is cut out because all of this is red behind there. So if I stamp, I stamp the cabin in there, but it had all that red showing through it, from the background paper of Deanna's. So that little paper cutout like that made it possible, I think, for us to use that cabin in that space like that. That one's a little bit lighter than this one. That one was, again, I was using this paper instead. I guess this paper's darker, so I don't know. Maybe the vintage paper is better for the cabins. I thought that wood grain in there kind of might add in, a little bit of an extra kind of touch into the wooden aged structures like that. I guess you can see some of those textures in there, but it's so little that I don't know if the benefit of doing it on the wood grain outweighs the lighter tone option of something like this vintage paper. Probably not. I'd probably stamp this cabin where, like, see this how it's a little bit darker right here. I would stamp this cabin like right here, and then that rooftop would be lighter in there. I guess there's just enough texture just in the design itself, where I don't know if this, like, that wood grain's really kind of showing in there. So I think on something like this would be good. And you can stamp it out on white pieces of paper too, but if you're going to be coloring them in anything like that, this is like a pretty good option to do it on because it just gets you kind of so much further along in the coloring process, and you get these different types of textures like that than maybe that you'd not normally get just doing it on white piece of paper and having to render that all yourself. It's kind of already inherently in the paper. So that type of thing's given me some ideas, using Deanna's papers like this. It's kind of given me ideas on, stamping these pieces out on a background. You don't have to do the background like that. But then, for a cabin, open cabin, if it's done on a white piece of paper, which I'll still do, but, just a simple little cutout like that, it kind of expedites the entire process of the objects as well as the, an entire background. Foreground too, this is like, part of Deanna's papers, so it's the background sky and the foreground ground in there too. But yeah, it's really fun to do. So again, it's stuff like this, I could stamp, our silhouettes over the top of this. And again, it's going to really provide a really cool, dramatic setting like that. But I know how to do that, so I really wanted to try some different things on these types of background papers like this. So I don't know. It's opening up some possibilities in my brain. you know? my little brain, I don't know. I hadn't thought about it before. It seems so easy to do. But I don't know. You don't have to, for me, you don't have to cut out this whole thing in here. You just cut out the cabin portion. So you're not cutting out all these trees or something like that that wouldn't, match at all, putting it over the top of that. So you just do the structures and it makes it really easy. Okay. Let's see. Cutout ideas on steroids. Yeah. We need to, yeah, even if it was like those real little things, like these little piers like this too. Like, okay, so that pier is going to show up on this one right here, no problem. But okay, that one's not a cutout. I thought it was a cutout. Oh no, I couldn't do a cutout on this one because I stamped that dog. Unless I cut out the dog tail, I don't want to cut out like that, that nose of that dog right there. So this one, okay, that one was done just directly on this. This was all light down here, so you can do whatever you want. But again, this one right here and that pier with that figure like that, that was really fun because this was kind of limiting down here. You can put like all silhouettes, but again, the cutout, no problem, like that. Now all they need is this type of paper like this vintage paper, but make it sticker paper where we can just stamp on down there and cut it out. And it already has the adhesive on the back. Wouldn't that be awesome? Because we don't need I'm not that lazy though, I guess. Almost though. All right. What would be the focal point be if there was a cabin, dog, or cat in front? It depends how you lit them, Caroline. But sometimes they play an equal thing. Like, what's the focal point here? Okay. For me, sometimes there's focal points like, okay, like in these two pieces right here. That's a really good question, though. On something like this, see, I put this dog, I didn't put this character over here because this dog is looking this way, okay? And I didn't put this in the center right here either, okay? I put it over here to the side because these things are going like this, but Deanna's paper right here is, that lighting in there is also kind of a focal point. I don't know, when you guys look at something like this, they're kind of equal players, I think. I don't know if it's 25% on each one, but my visual path is like starting here, and then I go like this, and then I would go up to that light source right there. Now I kind of increase that pull right here by adding in these crepuscular rays with the white pigment ink, but it's more like this. And then you probably come back down around, so there's this triangular type of sequencing and path going on. And that's the same thing right here. I don't know what we'd look at first in this. We'd probably, if this is so dark right here, we're probably looking at something like this. and then you're going down this way, and then coming over here, and then here. I'm guessing, I don't know. But this right here, I don't know what the pull would have been on that background. Maybe we'd start right here and we'd look out there and go up like that. So more of like a clockwise type of thing. I don't know. It might be different for different people though. But yeah, illumination would play a big part of that. I think. But again, it depends on the scale of the objects too. Like a dog was like a really big one in the foreground, you're probably going to go right to that first. But the big question would be, in a scenario like that, what would be the visual landing point? What do you look at to finish off the piece, or what kind of keeps your focus? What do you land on, and what retains your focus a little bit longer? Or is it just this path that's kind of more of like a track that you're on? So yeah, or if the cat is like in that scenario right there, but let's say there's a big full moon in the distance or something like that, and the cat's right there. You know what I mean? Like a silhouette of a cat, then that's definitely going to be, you know, it would be hard for other imagery to compete with kind of the visual power of that. You'd probably start on it, and you'd probably go around in the scene and go back to it and land on it. So like Linda's here too. Linda, when she does like a lot of her pieces, some of my favorite pieces of hers are her larger pieces where there's a lot of things going on. So I don't know. I don't think about it. I'm just like looking at it. But what I do is, it gets me to go around, and I'm looking in all of these little areas where there's a lot of more detail or people or animals kind of clustered in there. And so I don't know, for me on those ones, there might be like a visual, like a stronger object or area than others, but like on the monster maps and things like that, or just things on these larger pieces, I don't know, things kind of play they're equal to each other, I think, in terms of that. But there's a lot going on, so it's more of like this visual narrative. So it's more like the interior spread of a book. They say that the covers are for someone to see from, across the room or something like that. You really want to get someone's attention. So they do these bolder types of images that you can spot and recognize, but the interior spreads are often different, because you're looking at it from, whatever, 18 inches away or something like that, from your face, so you can go around and look at things and, have more detail in them like that. A cover can have that too, but it needs those stronger things to really pull people in, typically, and to compete. When there's like a shelf of books and there's a bunch of books out there, if you can get someone's attention a little bit more, and that's like icons for anything, icons for videos, which I don't take my time to do, but you're supposed to, like on videos. You want to get people's attention from a very small space in competing with 20 other videos that are up on your YouTube feed. So I don't know. Yeah. But that's an interesting thing, though, Caroline. One thing, that would be a really good exercise to do something like that same scenario, or use those same components in there, and do them in a way that would bring, let's say you want to emphasize the cabin in one, or the dog in another, or cat in another, or something like that, or the dog and a cat both. And that's one of the things that I call spotlighting, where you really darken in some areas and you have kind of illumination down there on your figures. So right here, we have a little bit of illumination right here because there's that little bit of light right back in there. So I put her there for a reason and not over here because, it'd be in darkness. But there was a little bit of light in this one right here, so I put her right over the top of that. And that would be like if you have a moon up in the sky and you have some birds like this, I'd probably put like half of them or a couple of them going across the moon. So it's like a little spotlit area in the sky like that. So, but it would be interesting. It'd be an interesting thing to, bring emphasis, to do like 3 of those or 2 different versions of something where you're kind of emphasizing one object or objects, things over the other and doing them in different ways. You can do them in different media too, or something like that, but just light them in a little bit of a different way. Lighting's the easiest way to bring emphasis to something. Use it for the Bold Journey article. Oh, yeah, that Bold Journey one. I just grabbed a bunch of my photos that I took for, there's just the ones like the recent ones for the Instagram and Facebook posts. So yeah, they usually want a picture of yourself, and it's like, I want people to read my article, not be not read it because of my photo. Have a great rest of evening, whatever time it is for you. I'll get these two formatted here. I might spray seal this one, I'm not sure. I might add a little bit more tone to this one, but this one, I think I want a little bit of I want a word stamp up here or something, or like I said, maybe an animal in here. I've done this type of scene a gazillion times, so I want to kind of amp it up a little bit. Yeah, we'll see. All right, folks. Thanks again. Have a great rest of day, evening, etc. Hope to see you on the next live stream. Thanks to Deanna for the use of her papers, too, on this one right here. And for giving me the idea of different types of usages. It really kind of opens your mind in terms of usage when you're working around kind of these existing types of backgrounds like this, And it's a fun little exercise to do. I'll be honest, though. I with some of them, I wasn't quite sure what to do with her first batches that I don't know when she gave those to me, like a year ago or something like that. But once I got going with them, it's like, we can use them in so many different ways. I was thinking of silhouette stamping, which I love to do, but I don't know. This one gave me, I don't know. It's giving me so many different ideas like this with the cutouts, recently with this. So yeah, and then they're applications that we can use on other, surfaces too, not just the backgrounds. So anyway, fun stuff. All right. Good night, everyone.